Well, it has finally happened. Magic the Gathering has partnered with Marvel. I know a lot of us have mixed feelings about Universe Beyond and the direction that Wizards is taking it, but at the end of the day, Universe Beyond has brought a ton of new players into the game, and for that, I am forever thankful. Today, I want to specifically talk about a draft guide for the new Magic the Gathering Marvel's Spider-Man set. There's a lot of new mechanics and some really fun archetype things that are happening, but I think that honestly this lines up really well for new players as it is not a complicated set in the limited format. The colors do what you think they should do, and it should be a pretty fun time. And so let's go ahead and take a closer look at all of the cards, archetypes, and everything you need to know to be successful at your pre-release event or the sealed party that you'll host with friends. When we talk about limited for a format in Magic the Gathering, that's just anything encompassing draft, cube, sealed. It is a limited environment of cards that you are able to pull from, and then you build a deck on the spot and then play with your opponents from there. It is a very fun format, and I highly recommend. There are multiple ways of going about it, but today we're specifically looking at pre-release. And pre-release is a little confusing because the product that you're getting are called pre-release kits. The event that you're going to go to at your local game store is called a pre-release event. However, the technical term for this format is called sealed. The reason for that is because when you get this item, a pre-release kit, you're able to not only have this at the event at your local game store, which happens the week before the set releases, but you can also just purchase these pretty much anytime once the set is released and then have your own sealed event. Have a sealed party with your friends at home. I highly recommend. But what we want to know really is what's included in this pre-release kit. Well, for this, we're specifically looking at Marvel's Spider-Man set. So, in this one, you will get 6 Magic the Gathering Marvel's Spider-Man Play Boosters, 1 traditional foil year-stamped rare or mythic rare card, 1 deck box. Now, I say that technically it's just this cardboard box that everything comes in, but you can organize a little bit. It is very helpful, especially when you're at the local game store to keep stuff organized. But if you want to keep all of your cards in there, go for it, but it is just the cardboard box, so keep that in mind. Anyways, you also get 1 spin down die. This is going to be a D20, and it's going to be among the 5 total color variations within Magic the Gathering, so 1 of Wooburg, either white, blue, black, red, green. And it's very fun because the 20 on the D20 is going to be the set symbol for whatever pre-release kit you opened. Something else to keep in mind for a new set is going to be that we are having new mechanics we need to understand. With Marvel's Spider-Man, we're actually only getting 2 new mechanics and then revisiting a couple others that I'm going to do a refresher on because they can be a bit confusing. The first new mechanic we are getting is called web-slinging. Web-slinging is pretty much flickering or blink. It's a mechanic where you are wanting ETB triggers to pop off and go hard. So when we're looking into web-slinging, think of the ability putting the action into the palm of your hands, just like the slinging of the web does. It's exactly what it is. You are flinging from one thing or the other. You are flinging and flickering your cards on and off the battlefield, getting as many triggers as possible. Now, another new mechanic from Marvel's Spider-Man set is going to be Mayhem. Mayhem is a little bit it's an alternative casting cost. Okay, so specifically, Wizards of the Coast wrote on their pre-release guide, I'm going to just read it because I want to be sure we get this. Mayhem is a new ability that allows you to cast a card from your graveyard for an alternative cost if you discarded it that turn. If you cast it this way, you may put the Mayhem cost rather than the mana cost. And as a reminder, text tells us Mayhem doesn't change when you cast a spell. So if you discarded a certain card from an opponent's turn, you can't take advantage of Mayhem because it's a sorcery. So you want to make sure you are following the rest of the rules on the card. Reading the card explains the card, but basically this alternative casting cost is going to allow you to have more shenanigans in your games, which is just going to be more fun. There are plenty of reasons why you would want to discard cards yourself. We are wanting to make sure that we are having shenanigans out of our graveyard. I mean, if you're having things in your graveyard, yes, there is a fear of milling out, but ultimately you are just going to be able to play those cards, especially because of certain things in this set from Spider-Man that will allow you to gain things out of your graveyard for big scary plays down the road. Now, one of the very first mechanics I want to talk about we are revisiting is connive. Connive is whenever a creature you control connives, you draw a card and then discard a card. If you discard a non-land card this way, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature that connived. If you discard a land card, the creature doesn't get a +1/+1 counter, but your hand is probably better, so that's something to be excited about. Connive is a very fun mechanic. There are very good creatures in other sets like Rafine from Streets of New Capenna that have connive, but it's not a mechanic we see very often, so the fact that it is highlighted in the set is something that you definitely need to revisit. Now, the next thing that we are getting as a return mechanic are modal double-faced cards. Basically, they're the cards that transform. Modal double-faced cards each have 2 faces, and if you're casting one, you choose which face you're casting. If you put one of them onto the battlefield without casting it, you get the front face, and the release notes for this set will have more information on the complex modal double-faced card interactions, but wait, there's a twist. These cards have a built-in way to transform. After all, we're really leaning into the secret special identity here. Peter Parker does not know who Spider-Man is. And so while one face will be Peter Parker and the other face is Spider-Man, those are secret identities, and that's what we're leaning into. So keep that in mind. And with a secret identity, you can't change costumes out in the world, but your secret identity is just your identity. That's that. So if the card's front faces up, there's an activated ability that allows you to transform it into the other face. Previously, a modal double-faced card couldn't transform, but that rule's going away. In fact, any modal double-faced permanent that is instructed to transform now can, although only the new ones in the set come with built-in ways to make that happen. So the back faces of these cards don't include transformability, so transforming into them is a one-way journey. If you cast them with their back face up to begin with, they'll enter with that face up, and that's that. The last revisited mechanic that we need to understand is one that is tried and true, and you will definitely know this already. We are talking about modified creatures. Most commonly, you're going to see this as +1/+1 counters, and that is something I love and am very excited about. But it also includes equipments. Importantly, auras controlled by other players don't cause creatures you control to become modified. For counters, it doesn't matter what kind of counter it is, nor does it matter what or who put it on the creature. A +1/+1 counter is just as effective at making a creature modified as a -1/-1 counter. So anything that is bumping up your creature is technically counting as modified. You just want to make sure that the aura is controlled by your other player, your opponent, doesn't count that. But modified creatures is a tried and true thing. I think we all get it. Now, before we get into the actual archetypes of this set, which is really what we came here for, I need to mention one final thing. In Marvel's Spider-Man set, for the first time, we are really understanding a signpost uncommon. So, what is a signpost uncommon? Well, each draft archetype has multiple 2-color uncommon cards called signpost uncommons. These cards loudly signal a draft's archetype strategy, helping you orient yourself in a brand new limited environment. Here are each of the draft archetypes as an exclamation for their strategies and one of their signpost uncommons. You can explore all the signpost uncommons in the set's card image gallery, with I included in this draft guide, so don't you worry. But we are going to go ahead and take a closer look at each of those archetypes. Archetypes are how multiple colors within WUBRG are going to fit together to do a specific strategy. We want our cards to synergize together. We want everything to work off one another, because that's going to make us have an ultimately better gameplay, a more fun experience, but do the thing and win. So when we're talking about doing the thing, we all know that WUBRG, each color has its own specific thing, and when we are combining them, we want to see what that is doing together. For this set, Marvel's Spider-Man draft archetypes: white-blue modified, blue-black villains connive, black-red mayhem, red-green large spells, and green-white web-slinging. So we're going to take a closer look at each one of those specifically, especially with the bombs that are going to help you know how to play that archetype well, and some fun things that I think will be included, as well as those signpost uncommons. First, we have white-blue modified. Your creatures are modified if they're equipped, have a counter on them, or enchanted by an aura you control. Evasion creatures are really strong here. Those are going to be creatures with things like double strike, but specifically flying. Flying creatures are really popular in white-blue, so if you can find anything like that, it's going to be very helpful. Evasive creatures are huge, but if they're getting +1 counters on them or any kind of modification with an equipment, they're going to be even more scary. So you want to make sure that you strike hard for unblockable damage and the white-blue modified archetype. I really enjoy these 2 cards here. Anti-Venom is very, very scary, but you do want to be careful because the 5 white pips is going to be very hard to pull off, and generally people are going to say that this is a better commander card, but how fun would it be if you could actually do this? Some other things that I like to look at are things like cards like Flying Octobot. It's a flying, so evasion creature where whenever a villain you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, triggering only once each turn. So it's just a quick way of getting a fast creature out. It's only 1 in a blue, 1/1 flyer, so you can go right in for damage, but you're getting that trigger of modifying creatures as cards, villains, enter the battlefield under your control. And if we can flicker or blink those cards, getting multiple ETB triggers, then we're just going to get more +1 counters, and it's going to be very fun. Silver Sable is also very good. Whenever she enters, put a +1 counter on another target creature, and whenever she attacks target modified creature you control, gains lifelink until end of turn. Now, I know life is a resource, but with all the scary archetype stuff going on and the rest of this set, any kind of life gain is going to be very helpful. So you don't want to discount it, even though life is a resource. Now, when we are looking at the signpost uncommons, you have Sun Spider, Nimble Webber, and Wraith, Vicious Vigilante. During your turn, a Sun Spider has flying, and when Sun Spider enters, search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So this is a classic signpost of white-blue because we're searching for that modification on the equipment or aura, while Wraith has double strike and fear gas. It can't be blocked. That is the main thing with white-blue in general. Evasion creatures are very good, but having it being unblockable is what we want to focus on. We want to strike hard for unblockable damage. If that's just too lighthearted for you, I would highly suggest Blue-Black Villains Connive archetype. It is going to be very focused around evasion as well. We have flyers, death touch, very scary mechanics. But the main thing here is Connive. The Connive ability is, again, you are drawing and discarding a card. If you discard a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that connived. If you're not putting a +1 counter on the creature because you're discarding a land, hey, that's okay. At least we're going through our library and figuring out what we need and having a better hand so that we can do the stuff we need to. Now, when we think about Dimir in general, blue, black, anything, it is going to be the scary stuff. So villains is a good creature type for this deck, and Vulture Scheming Scavenger proves that. It is a 4/6 flyer. Whenever Vulture attacks, other villains you control gain flying until end of turn. So not only is this a very strong evasive creature, but it's making your other's creature have flying as well. That is so good. Scorpion Seething Striker is a 3/3 death touch, which is a wonderful thing to have. I technically count that as removal, but Scorpion Seething Striker also says at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, target creature you control connives. So we are really wanting to focus on that connive ability, going through our library so we can get the cards in hand that we need. Ultimately, there is a little bit of graveyard manipulation in this set, which will be very fun, but really we're just wanting to make sure the cards we need are in our hand, and connive allows us to do that. There are some instances that are fun for this as well. Unstable Experiment is a good example. Target player draws a card, then up to one target creature you control connives. So it's a very quick connive ability, and it's at instant speed. So if you want to hold up mana at your opponent's turn to do shenanigans, but it just didn't work out that way, at least you can do an Unstable Experiment to have some things pop off a little bit hard and make sure that your next turn goes well. Finally, I want to look at Tombstone Career Criminal. When Tombstone enters, return target villain card from your graveyard to your hand. So there it is, folks. There is indeed graveyard manipulation. So that is very nice. But this is also really good for this archetype. Villain spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So we are able to play things for a less CMC, which is ultimately making us have a wider mana base to use for other cards. So very good, and I don't want you to overlook that. Next, we are going to our signpost uncommons here. We have Morbius the Living Vampire. For a blue and a black, exile this card from your graveyard. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. We want to make sure that we are manipulating our library, manipulating our graveyard, and this is a signpost because it is tried and true manipulation of our connive ability here. We also have Vulture, Scheming a Scavenger, Prowler, Clawed Thief, which is a 2/3 with Menace. Whenever another villain you control enters, Prowler connives. So not only are we getting the synergy of the creature type here for villains, but we are also having this connive. If you want to splash some white in there as well to really go off of the white-blue blink effects, I think that would be really fun, and it is a little bit scary to go 3-color. 2-color is the most recommended in a sealed format, but if you feel comfortable, I would splash some white here to make sure that you are getting those ETB triggers to blink them to really do well. Speaking of graveyard manipulation, that takes us to our next archetype for Black-Red Mayhem. Discarding cards sometimes can feel like a downside, but this deck really takes advantage of cards going to the graveyard with a flurry of mayhem spells. So again, there will be some graveyard manipulation, but when we're looking at cards like Green Goblin, Revenant, or Prison Break, there is that mayhem ability, specifically on this sorcery. So let's look at it. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So good, which explains the beefy CMC, but we also are looking here for the mayhem cost. You may cast this card from your graveyard for the mayhem cost if you discarded it this turn. Timing rules still apply. This is said because this is a sorcery card, so you can't just do instant shenanigans with this. It is a sorcery, so you need to keep that in mind. Reading the card explains the card. There are going to be classic cards like Raging Goblinoids, where it is a haste, mayhem, 2 and a red, 5/4 creature. Very simple, doing the right thing, being big, scary, and strong out of the gate with haste, so definitely don't want to discount those. And we also have fun cards like Behold the Sinister Six. It is a mythic, so again, a beefy CMC, but let's look at this. Return up to 6 target creature cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. This card is an absolute bomb and is a total game changer and will absolutely demolish whatever game this is played in. It is a mythic, so it's going to be more difficult to pull. Keep that in mind. However, if you can pull this off, you're going to have a wonderful game and hopefully win it at the end. Finally, let's take a look at those signpost uncommons. Shriek Troublemaker is a 2/3 mutant villain. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. And then it has Sonic Blast. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, Shriek deals 1 damage to that player. So we're just getting more damage done here, doing the very scary stuff of Rakdos. And also Scarlet Spider Kane is a 2/1 menace creature where whenever it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Scarlet Spider. There also is a mayhem ability of either a black or a red, so that's very nice. We're able to do graveyard manipulation with that mayhem. Also, Green Goblin Revenant. This was not only a signpost here, but a highlight at the very front of this archetype. It is a 3/3 flying death touch creature. Whenever Green Goblin attacks, discard a card. Then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. Again, I know it can be scary having cards going to your graveyard rather than making sure we have cards in hand to play. However, when we have cards like Behold the Sinister Six, we're not worried about it. We're getting all those creatures in our graveyard so we can play Behold the Sinister Six, returning 6 target creature cards with different names from our graveyard to the battlefield for only 6 and a black. That's crazy. Okay, but I want to take us now over to red-green large spells for that archetype. Red-green decks hit hard. These are big, stompy creatures that are going to be very scary, so they are having a wider and very large CMC, but when these massive creatures and bombastic spells hit, you're doing a ton of damage. We want to make sure that we are having a good mana curve, so we're having spells to play early game, not just relying on these late game bombs. However, they are going to be really good when they actually hit. So if we're looking at Rhino Barreling Brute, it is a 6/7 Vigilance, Trample, Haste, legendary creature. Whenever Rhino attacks, if you've cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater this turn, draw a card. Again, red-green cares about large spells, so you've probably cast a card with mana value 4 or greater that turn, and I hope that that happens. Even if this gets on the battlefield, it's 3, 2 red, and 2 green. So once this is out, if you're still casting spells, you're going to have time to cast multiple things and hopefully get that card draw very easily. Shocker Unshakable is also good. During your turn, Shocker has first strike. When Shocker enters, he deals 2 damage to target creature and 2 damage to that creature's controller. This would be a very fun thing to blink because we don't want to pay that CMC again. It is 4 and 2 red, but it is a 5/5 creature. So again, a big scary guy that does a lot of damage on enter. The Dinosaur Man here is a 5/4 menace with Dinosaur Formula, where for 1 and a red, discarding this card, until end of turn, target creature you control gets +3/+1 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other types. I was a little bit surprised about the dinosaurs in the set, but then when I thought about it in the comics, it made sense. We also have Spider Rex Daring Dino here. It is a 6/6 reach trample with ward 2. So call back to Earthshaker Dreadmaw and all the scary things, but we're just having dinosaur shenanigans, which is tried and true for red green. So I'm very happy Gruul is happening here. Now, I also want to look at Grow Extra Arms. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a spider. This is not going to be difficult. There are so many spiders happening in Spiderman. Who would have thunk? But basically, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn, and we really don't mind if it costs 1 less or not because it only has a CMC of 1 and a green. Basically, we're able to bump up our scary creature +4/+4 at instant speed to do combat shenanigans because they're going to block thinking our small, tiny creature can't do anything. But when it grows extra arms, heck yes it can. It's going to get +4/+4. So counts as removal. That's a great card. Highly recommend, as well as these signpost uncommons. Rhino's Rampage is a sorcery. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It fights target creature an opponent controls, and when excess damage is dealt to the creature an opponent controls this way, destroy up to 1 target non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less. Depending on what's going on, the mana value 3 or less isn't going to feel great, but that's going to be probably a more of a commander thing, and we're in limited, folks. So a mana value of 3 or less is probably going to be very likely. It's just going to be interesting to see what kind of non-creature artifact we can target, but still getting the fight ability here to hopefully get some removal, as well as the targeting non-creature artifact removal is very nice for only a 1 CMC. Craven Proud Predator is a star 4 Vigi creature. Craven's power is equal to the greatest mana among permanents you control. So as you're playing other spells, that power is just going to go up and up. We are very excited about this. It is an early game thing that you can get with a butt of 4, and vigilance is going to be very nice. So definitely don't discard this. We want to make sure this is growing as our game does as well. Rhino Barreling Brute is a 6/7 Vigilance Trample Haste creature. Whenever Rhino attacks, if you've cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater this turn, draw a card. I think we've already talked about this. It's good. It's doing the red-green things. Okay, our final archetype for this Marvel's Spider-Man set is green-white web-slinging. We talked a little bit about web-slinging earlier. Just a reminder, think about an actual Spider-Man swinging through the cityscape, right? You are slinging from one place to another as quickly as possible, going back and forth. So when we think about going back and forth with our cards here in Magic the Gathering, that is called flicker or blink. They are interchangeably the exact same thing, and you just want to make sure that you are blinking your cards to exaggerate and expand upon your ETB triggers, your enter the battlefield triggers. So Spider-Man India is a 4/4 web slinging of 1 green and a white. You may cast the spell for 1 green and a white if you also return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. So we are gonna be not strictly blinking, because blink is just removing it from the game and then returning it at your end step. However, this is forcing it to your hand so that you can cast it later, and that is gonna allow you to get that ETB trigger again. This card also has, whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. Evasion is going to be very strong. We know that evasion is happening in other archetypes, so you want to make sure that you have flyers as well to be able to block those. Spiderman Heroic Horde is a 2/3 with web slinging, 4 green, which sounds insane because his CMC is just 1 and a green. But if you are web slinging this Spiderman enters if they were cast using web slinging, you gain 3 life and create 2 2/1 green spider creature tokens with reach. Again, we need reach to be able to block those evasive creatures, but gaining life and creating 2 additional creatures is very strong. So you can either get a 2/3 creature early on in game to be able to block and do fun things with, or save it for later, do the web slinging cost, and making sure that you are building out your board state to be very wide and scary. Some important other cards to notice here is the Psionic Weaver of a web slinging 1. As it enters, look at an opponent's hand, then choose a card type other than creature. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 more to cast. Now, depending on the types of cards that are in the other archetypes, it's definitely going to change which card type you choose. You just cannot choose creature. We can't make our creatures cast cost go up, so it's important to note that it will never be creature. It cannot be creature. Just choose something else and you'll be good to go. Finally, Peter Parker here. Technically, this is a 3-color card that we see down below. It is green, white, blue. Technically, you don't ever need to transform him for it to do well in this green-white deck. Now, if you want to splash some blue, that'll be very fun, but for this archetype, we're just strictly looking at Peter Parker here. He is a 0/1, and when he enters, create a 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. With a CMC of only 1 and a white, this card is really strong because if we are flickering this back to our hand, it is only a very small casting cost that we will have to pay another time. So we are getting to have not only this creature, Peter Parker, but again, that 2/1 green spider creature token with reach. So basically for 1 and a white, you are getting 2 creatures, a 0/1 and a 2/1. So we want to return this to our hand to make sure we are getting 2 creatures for 1 and a white. Again, the signpost uncommons are going to be things that are tried and true for this archetype. So when we are looking at the green-white here, we got Spider Girl, Legacy Hero. During your turn, Spider Girl has flying. Yay! Whenever Spider Girl leaves the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. So again, here we aren't having the ETB trigger, but a leaving the battlefield trigger, making more 1/1 tokens, which is honestly what green-white does. We are used to going wide and green-white. Spiderman India we already talked about, so let's take a look at Web Warriors. It is a 4/3 spider hero. When this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. Now, if we remember our white-blue archetype, it is all about modified creatures. That +1/+1 counter is modifying a creature, and like we saw with Peter Parker, splashing blue in here would be a good strategy for this deck. They are going to work really well together, but again, if you can do 2 colors, that is going to be the strongest for you because manifesting can be very difficult. However, let's take a look. Really, when this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. Each. We are putting it on all of our creatures. You're not just targeting one for a +1 counter, you are putting it on each other creature you control. Your little tiny tokens as well as your big scary evasive things. So the 4 and additional green or white is going to be a very good CMC for this because it's on each other creature. That's crazy. I'm very excited for this. Hopefully it works well for you. But now we need to take a look at how to build our deck. In any kind of limited environment, your deck has to be a minimum of 40 cards. You are able to go above 40 if you would like. It is just recommended do 40 because you want to make sure that you're actually drawing the cards that you need. And so when we focus on having a good mana curve, it allows our synergy within our deck to go really well. So a mana curve is focusing on having a curve of your CMC, your mana values. When we are looking specifically at our creatures here, this is a really good example of what it would be needed for your limited environment. Again, a 40 card deck. So traditionally, this means you are going to have 23 spells and 17 lands. When we are looking at creatures specifically, that is generally what we focus our deck building strategy around alongside the archetypes that those creatures focus on. So when we're looking at 1 CMC creatures, you want to have 0 to 2 of those to make sure that we are having early play things. But the creatures that have a 2 and 3 CMC are going to have a little bit extra abilities, which is going to make them stronger. So you want a bit more of those with 4 or 6 creatures in the 2 CMC category and 3 to 5 in the 3 CMC. Now, as the CMC grows, our creatures that we are having in that category diminishes. This is because they are going to be bombs and that we want to play them late game for sure. We just want to make sure that we are able to play things throughout all of our turns, not just waiting for scary stuff later on, because then likely we are having too much damage done to us and we can't catch up, and that even though those creatures at the end of the game, those higher CMC cards are going to be really, really good, we just really can't catch up. So you want to make sure that you have stuff to play throughout the entirety of it. Now, like I said, in a 40 card deck, that means that you have 23 spells and 17 lands. So I would just recommend going back and forth between those two sides. You are having 1 to 2 1 CMC cards, 7 to 8 2 CMC cards, where you are ultimately having 4 to 6 of those as creatures. Creatures are going to be the main thing that does the damage here, and again, we want our opponent's life total to get to 0. There aren't as many opportunities for shenanigans like Commander, so even though instants and sorceries, enchantments, auras, equipments, all of the things are very strong and you need them for your deck. We want to make sure the focus is on creatures here because that's where the archetype strategy pays off. Finally, I want to mention a couple things you absolutely cannot forget. So keep this as a reminder. Don't forget these. First and foremost, removal is essential. Removal is going to make your deck very strong. You're going to control your opponent, but it's going to be the thing that allows you to keep the game going no matter what your opponent is bringing at you. If you're an inexperienced player, if you're not confident in your deck building strategy, just make sure you get some removal in there and you will be good to go. Here are a couple of the really good removal spells in each color for this archetype within Marvel's Spider-Man set. I would highly recommend drafting or picking up any of these for your sealed event because removal again is very necessary. So take a screenshot here, bring this with you to the event, and you will do well. A couple other things is to practice a mulligan, especially if you're a newer player. You want to make sure that you are seeing the even CMC across the board. I highly recommend having a 3 land hand at the very start. That ensures that we are able to play the spells that we need to, but also if you go above a 2 color deck, we want to make sure we are practicing a mulligan because that shows us how many colors we're getting in our hand to be able to really see how the deck is going to progress. If we are not able to get those lands as quickly as we need, then maybe it would be smarter to break it down into a 2 color deck, even though that 3 color, 4 color, 5 color deck seemed really fun. Just practice a mulligan, make sure your deck is good to go, and feel confident going into your games. That takes us to our final don't forget, which is don't forget your sideboard. You are able to sideboard cards between games, making sure that your deck is synergized, having the pieces it needs, but depending on the deck you are going against. In one deck, you might not need as much removal and want to add more modifications, whereas a different deck, the creatures are just too scary, too fast, and you don't have flyers, but they do. So you need to throw in more removal against that opponent. You are able to sideboard, so make sure that that is at your disposal as well. And ultimately, just remember to have fun. This is a fun game where we are able to connect in community, focusing on the gathering part of Magic, right? Magic the Gathering. We want to make friends. We are here to nerd out with all of our fellow like-minded folks. So make sure you have fun, make sure that you are being kind, and just have a great time. All right, friends, so even if you're strictly a Commander player, I hope that you give this a try. Limited in general, but really sealed is a wonderful environment for you to be able to play cards that you wouldn't normally play in Commander because there are different cards good for limited that you might not use in your Ultra Power CEDH deck. So you're getting to play all of the new cards in a set. It's forcing you to learn the new mechanics, and it's just a really good time to be able to keep up with understanding the development of Magic over time. And so seeing how the new sets unfold, it's going to give us a peek into what the new sets that you might actually be interested in are going to have as well. So I highly recommend that everyone try some kind of limited event, whether that's sealed, draft, cube, whatever it is, but we want to make sure we are learning the new set. So go on and hang out with your friends, go to the local game store, do some kind of limited event, and let me know in the comments what you thought about Spider-Man. If we're excited, what card you're most excited to pull, and I hope that you get all of the best plays during your event, friends. Thank you so much for hanging out, and until next time, happy gaming.